How do you transition from winter workouts to spring ball, and is there a change in focus and what you look for? Obviously, when you're able to do more with them on the field.
Well, I think it's going to be exciting to get on the field with them and get to throw a football around and get to see them move around live. But for us right now, it's all about building on the foundation we've laid in phase one. So we've been able to do a little bit of football work by NCAA rule leading up to this point. There's limitations based on what you can do as far as seeing a ball thrown live and all those different things. But we just want to build on the foundation that we've been able to create in winter workouts and see these guys keep progressing.
Coach Pry mentioned that Connor Blumerick is a guy who could potentially play multiple roles for you, and you've got to figure out where his best fit is. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what type of player can he be? How many positions can he play, et cetera?
Yeah, he's an incredible athlete to start off with. Like, you can see that with him moving around. You can see that from his tape in the past. The exciting thing for me, first and foremost, is getting to watch him compete for the quarterback job. He's got a good way about him, has been a good leader through phase one. So I'm excited about that first, but you can certainly see versatility in his game where he could fit a number of different places. Is that split out and doing some things in routes? Is that playing a tight end type position? But the thing for me with him right now is I don't even want to go down that road. He's going to compete for the quarterback job, and I'm excited to watch him go out and do it.
How do you structure that quarterback competition? When we talked to Brad last week, or a couple weeks ago, he said 6 guys get reps. That's a lot of guys to get reps. How quickly do you have to whittle that down, and how quickly do you anticipate whittling that down?
Well, the neat thing about a new staff, right, is they all have a clean slate, and we've got some new guys in the fold. So I think it starts there. For us, it's a lot based on them. They're going to whittle it down as quickly as the competition's decided. I do think we have to be cognizant of the reps that are allocated during the spring, right? There's only so many reps that we can have, but right now it's an open competition, and those guys have a clean slate, and that'll start to take shape. I don't know if it's practice 2, practice 4, practice 6, on into the summer and fall camp. It'll start to take shape as those guys take a hold of the offense.
Do you feel like by the end of spring you need to have a pecking order? Or do you need like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right at the end of spring, or can it go into spring as a completely open, not nebulous, but like just sort of an open competition that's not too defined?
I think out of spring you'll have somewhat of a pecking order in some way, shape, or form, but it might not be defined as like who is going to be the starter, who is number 2, who is number 3. To me, it's whenever the time's right and whenever we find that guy to be the starter at that position.
In terms of operation at the quarterback spot, are you guys a team that's going to operate out of the shotgun primarily, or under center, or what's that going to kind of look like?
We'll be multiple. We'll be multiple in different alignments back there. I mean, I think you'll see the majority out of the shotgun. I think if you look at the phase of football and the type of athletes that we have at that position, it lends you to be a little bit more versatile in what you can do in the run and the pass game. But we will be multiple in those alignments as we get the offense installed.
And you've said, the tight ends, you and Brent have said the tight ends are going to be kind of a focal point of the offense. Does that mean a lot of 12 personnel or just mixing through them, in different looks? What's kind of the plan there with the tight ends, lining up in the backfield? Like, when you say they're going to have kind of an expanded role, what is that going to look like?
Well, I think you look at what we've done with the tight end position at places in the past. It has been a focal point. But the thing I would say, right, and I go back to kind of what I've preached to the team and what we've talked about all off season with you guys is, for me, it's about finding who are those 5 guys from a personnel standpoint, right? Is that going to lend more towards 11 personnel, 12 personnel, 13 personnel, 21 personnel, 20 personnel? Like that can take a variety of shapes, because I think the thing you're always trying to do offensively is make sure that you are getting your 5 best playmakers around that offensive line and quarterback. Then you have a chance to be successful as an offense. But from a focal point standpoint at that position, we certainly will be in 11 and 12 and potentially some heavier sets, but it's all going to kind of depend on what those guys do and what those guys show. I look at it's pretty neat for me, like you go into a spring with a new roster. We've been able to see these guys move around and do some different things. But now getting the ball in the air, getting the ball in different guys' hands, you're going to get to see those different position groups between tight end and running back and receiver compete against each other. Who's going to get the lion's share of the touches, so to speak. So I think that part of it's exciting for me as we go into it, and that'll start to take shape on, hey, who can we be personnel-wise? How multiple can we be?
In terms of the offensive line, you got a boost with Silas and Johnny Jordan coming back. That second group, is tackle kind of the concern with depth-wise? Seems like you guys got a lot of interior guys. Is that where the concern is on the offensive line at tackle?
Yeah, I think we've got some work to do in developing that depth. The numbers would lend you to say that we have a lot of guys at the interior position, right? And tackle certainly is something that we've got to get settled in, and kind of who are those 3 and 4 guys. But I look at the offensive line in the whole. I think we've got some players that can be multiple at different spots. So like for me, it's coming out of this thing. It's like, okay, who are your 5? Right, because there's some competition still going on in that first 5, and then now who's 6, who's 7, who's 8, who's 9, who's 10, and then how can we move pieces around if something were to happen to make sure that we get our best 5 up front in front of the quarterback and running back.
I asked you about how many quarterbacks you have. You have even more running backs on this roster. How difficult or challenging is that to pare that group down to a workable number, or a number that you can get a really good evaluation of guys if you're not splitting around 9 different ways or whatever it is?
Right. We've got to be creative in how we evaluate that position, and I think that goes back. I mean, you're kind of tying that in with the quarterback as well, because we've got a number of those guys to rep, but at that position even more, right? 9 coming into this thing. I think we've got to be creative. It's not just the team reps where you're evaluating those guys, but it's how does this guy do in one-on-ones? When we're in install periods, how are these guys learning the offense, right? The first thing is going to be able to our execution piece, which is alignment, assignment, and then technique. So I think you're evaluating those guys in a variety of ways, and then we've got to be able to whittle it down, right? Just no different than the quarterback position, because there's only so many reps to go around. But I'm excited about that group. It's been fun to watch them move around in phase 1. Seeing what they can do athletically. Now we get to see what they do with the ball in their hands, how they protect the football. That's a paramount for us as an offense, being able to protect the football and eliminate turnovers, and then how they operate within the system. But they have a clean slate as well, and we're going to get an idea with that as soon as we can.
Yeah, Tyler, as far as the open practice this weekend, can you glean anything as far as how guys perform in front of a crowd with more eyes on them, or does that not really play into it?
No, I think so, and I think it's pretty neat too with the open practice. It's exciting for me, get a chance to get in that stadium. You know, I think there should be a really different tone from going to your – it's not that it's not competitive and all those things when you're in the indoor, you're on our practice field, but when we go into that stadium, right, that's a different deal, right? That's home for us. There's a different type of energy, a different urgency level from different guys, and I think you get a chance to see that no matter if there's fans or not. When we go into that stadium, seeing how guys perform on that stage.
One more?
With the wide receivers, in the past, have you noticed at your previous stops, since the transfer portal's kind of been put in place, that's a position that's hard to develop depth? Seems like quarterback, receiver, guys that want the ball in their hands. Have you noticed that? And when you have a large group of young receivers, what do you think is going to be the kind of key to kind of getting them ready to be, productive? Because it seems like you guys, only 2 guys are really experienced right now. I mean, how do you kind of get that group ready?
Right. Well, to answer the first part of your question, right? There's only one ball. There's only one ball, so I think there's a level to all those positions, right? You got to be able to. It's kind of, speaking. We're in heavy basketball mode right now here at Virginia Tech, right? It's how do those guys play without the ball in their hand to be able to be available and open for the quarterback? That's number one at that position. And I think the receiver position is one of the positions I'm probably most excited about when I look at our team, because there's not a lot of statistics on paper, right? But there's a lot of guys that have done some really good things through the winter, and I'm excited to be able to go out and see what they can do when the ball's in the air. So I think that'll take care of itself from a development standpoint, right? You do have a young group, and I think with any of our guys, we're all doing this from the ground up, right? I haven't been with any of these players on a day-to-day basis, obviously, right? So you're building everything from a fundamental and technique standpoint. So for that position, it's everything from how do we stance and start, how do we work releases, how do we work the top end of our route, how are we in defeating man coverage and contested catch situations. So it's going to be fun for me to be able to watch those guys work with Coach Mines and get out there and really build that foundation of skills from the ground up and watch them compete.